What's up, guys? It has been with 2020 election predictions, and right now, we are only 4 days away from the election. It just turned midnight in the Eastern time zone. We are only 4 days away. It's Friday. The big day is Tuesday when the votes are finally going to start being count. And I think one big question is when are we going to know who won the 2020 presidential election? And I mean, I really don't think that we are going to know on election night or maybe even the Wednesday after. If you remember back to 2016, we know that we knew that Trump was going to win at about 1:45 a.m., which is honestly fairly late because the 2016 election, I don't think that a lot of people remember this, was actually very, very close. And I mean, it really only came down to about 70,000 votes in those three states, those three historic states that I and a lot of people have been talking about for a while. That is Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. I mean, if Hillary Clinton, if 70,000 votes go her way, then she wins. But we kind of knew starting out, I would say around 10 or 10:30, that Trump was probably the favorite, but it was still up in the air. One thing that I thought was very interesting is kind of the New York Times live election bets there, and kind of just how it flipped so quickly there. So let me kind of go to the chat, answer some of y'all's questions. AA says Gen Z turnout is extremely high. 70% of them will vote Biden. So across the board, voter turnout is going to be very, very high, and we know this for several reasons. We already know that 80 million people have voted, which is the biggest early voting number ever, more than half of the votes that were cast in total in 2016. And I mean, I think we honestly might get close when we get to election. I think we're going to get over 100 million votes in early voting. And I mean, I think it's going to be definitely pretty crazy. And let's see what John Lightfoot says in the chat. Watched Odds Checker UK, and they said Pennsylvania is the big clue. So yes, I don't think we're going to know Pennsylvania. I don't think it's going to be decided on election day. One state where I think we actually might know pretty early on in election night is the state of North Carolina. They start counting their early votes pretty early, so they're actually already starting to count their early votes as they come in. So we're going to get a running total that I think is going to come out at 7 o'clock Eastern, and then obviously they're still going to have to count the election day votes. One thing that I think we'll know, North Carolina is called pretty early. If they can call it pretty early for Biden, then I think we're going to have a pretty firm grasp of who our next president is going to be early on Tuesday. I would say probably by 8:30 or 9 o'clock. However, if Trump wins North Carolina, and right now I have North Carolina almost as a pure toss-up. In my latest video, I had it tilting towards Trump. But if Trump does win it, and by a pretty significant margin, I mean, we can look at kind of the 538 map and kind of click on if we see that Trump wins North Carolina. But then it's a lot more competitive race because North Carolina and most of the models, even predicted right now, have Biden winning North Carolina. So pretty early on, we can see that Trump is winning in North Carolina. I think that North Carolina is going to be called by 8 or 9 o'clock on Tuesday. So I think it's kind of one of the big questions is when are we going to know who our next president is? And is it going to go to the Supreme Court? Is it going to be challenged in the courts? My prediction is that we're going to know by 9 o'clock Eastern on election day night if it's going to drag out further, or if Biden's going to win by a big enough margin in states like North Carolina where we can pretty certainly call it pretty early. Because if Biden wins North Carolina, I really don't see a ton of paths for Trump. Trump would have to win Florida and the entire Rust Belt, which is definitely possible. But North Carolina kind of has similar demographics to some of the other states that he needs to win. And I would say North Carolina is looking more favorable to Trump than some of these other Rust Belt states. So that's kind of what I feel right now. If we go to kind of the 538 forecast manipulator right now. I can look at the predictions if Biden were to win North Carolina or Trump would win North Carolina and what effect that would have. So if Trump wins North Carolina, then his chances shoot up from an 11% chance to a 30% chance. So, I mean, it doesn't change a lot, but definitely, I mean, Trump's chances triple and he's still the underdog. However, if Biden wins North Carolina, Trump only wins in 1% of these scenarios. You are asking about Pennsylvania. So I'm going to reset our map. So currently how we're looking at right now, Trump has an 11% chance to win, according to Nate Silver, and Biden has an 89% chance. If Trump were to win Pennsylvania, and that's kind of it, he has a 65% chance to win, while Biden has a 34% chance to win. So still a pretty close matchup there. But if Trump is to win Pennsylvania, then he is the favorite. So I think that's where the election is going to come down to, is the state of Pennsylvania. But with kind of all the vote by mail rules in Pennsylvania, I think it's going to be challenged in the courts. We've already seen that the courts have decided, I think, a lot in Pennsylvania. I think kind of the earliest indicator on who's going to win the election is going to come down to North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. Those are all primarily, I think North Carolina is exclusively in the Eastern time zone, Florida in the Central and Eastern time zone. But definitely a lot of different things that are going to happen there. And I see, like, people are thinking that this is going to drag out for a while. I actually think that we're going to see some pretty early indicators on election night, either if they're favorable for Trump or favorable for Biden. So I think we're going to see that data earlier than people might think, because if Trump wins, then I could probably say that we think that Trump could be the favorite, or if he wins Florida by 2 to 3 points there, then I think we can say that the polls on the whole underestimated him a lot. And so I don't think there's going to be as many kind of like vote by mail issues in states like North Carolina or Florida and Georgia than some of these other states. But let's see here. Let me go to the chat right here and answer some of y'all's questions. So how come early voting is much higher in the South than the northern states? I don't really want to speculate on that right now, because I don't necessarily know. But what I do know is that a lot of the different states have different rules, and it very much is political. Whoever's the governor and what the state legislature decides. Jordan Watts, do you feel Texas is close, or are you unsure? I think Texas definitely, Trump's probably going to win by 2 to 3 points. So not incredibly close, but definitely closer than on the 9th. You think there's a point to watching election night coverage, or is it just going to give me the wrong idea? If I were y'all, I would very much try to watch election night coverage. I'm going to be doing a live stream on election night. So even if you are watching the TV, I would love it if y'all would tune in to my live stream right now too, because I'm definitely going to have updates. I'm going to be looking at Twitter. I'm going to be looking at different websites, different models, and the TV. So I'm going to be kind of including all of it without kind of a partisan take there. Sebastian says Trump will win. 45% of his base will vote on November 3rd. My prediction is we have a map just like 2016, give or take one state. So that definitely could be true. Let's see. Evan Marta says way less people in the other stream. This is true. That the other night, I don't know if y'all were all here. I think some of y'all were here. I got over 1,000 people on one live stream. It was very, very exciting. I think it's a little bit late now, so maybe I'll try tomorrow. If Trump wins Florida, he has a 66% chance to win, and if he wins Florida and Arizona, he has a 82% chance to win. So I don't know exactly what website you're looking at there. On 538, if Trump wins Florida, it says he only has a 31% chance to win. And if he wins both Arizona and Florida, it's a 40% chance to win. But I tend to agree with your numbers there, Sebastians. No Martinez says, do you think the polls are more accurate this time around? Well, it's hard to know. Honestly, I've been seeing a lot of different information in these polls. The Trafalgar Group and Rasmussen have been showing vastly different polls than, some of the more mainstream polls. And for example, there was a poll the other day out of Wisconsin that had Biden up by 17 points. This is definitely an outlier, but I just don't see how we can have polls that have Biden up 17 points in Wisconsin, and then there was another poll that had Wisconsin tied. I mean, these polls are just vastly out of the margin of error. Obviously, they're outliers, but I mean, I think this just goes to show that we should not be taking polls to their exact numbers. I tend to think that we should kind of look at the polls in aggregate, while also kind of taking the average of them, but also including the margin of error. And I think the margin of error in some of these polls is 5 or 6 points. And if we look at the polling margins, Trump is within the margin of error in North Carolina, Florida, and Arizona, and Pennsylvania. And if he kind of sweeps all those states, then he wins. So all we need is kind of one polling error for Trump to win. However, Trump's or Biden's polling margin does appear to be greater than Hillary Clinton's margin was in 2016. One other thing I want to say about the polls, it's pretty interesting right now. It looks like that the voter registration data, especially North Carolina and Florida, are very different than the polls. It appears that the Republicans are registering people to vote at a lot greater margins than they have been in the past. They've been closing kind of the registration gap. And it's just I don't really understand how we're kind of seeing this difference. I mean, we could definitely see kind of the shy voter effect that we have seen before, but I mean, I think that in some of these states it's going to be more uncertain. I think with COVID, I think with the shy voter effect, I think with a lot of different factors that polls actually might be less trustworthy now than they maybe were like 12, 16, or 20 years ago in those elections. Because if we look back in the past, in 2012, in 2008, in 2004, and in 2000, the polls were fairly accurate. It's interesting, as our polls have gotten more advanced, as we've kind of been able to parse the data, it appears that the polls have not come with it. Because in 2016, the state data polls, especially the Rust Belt, was very, very wrong. And on the national level, while it wasn't that wrong, I mean, it was pretty wrong. And I mean, polls are coming out every 30 minutes now. I follow this Twitter account called Political Polls, and I mean, it's updating very, very closely. Especially now, we're probably going to see about 50 different polls come out in the next 4 days. But right now, I don't think that the most wise thing is to look at the polls. I think looking at the early voting data, the early voter registration data, and also just looking at maybe like some of Trump's rallies, how many people are coming out, what people are saying. I mean, people said that like yard signs were actually a pretty early predictor of Trump's victory. I don't know how much we kind of put it into that, but I don't think right now that the polls are necessarily the most wise things to look at, and which is why I'm a little bit more suspicious of some of these models that are very heavily reliant on the polls. So let me kind of go into the chat to answer some of y'all's questions. I have 132 people, which is definitely good. If y'all kind of have a big question y'all want to ask, or if y'all want to support the channel, I really appreciate it if y'all would use the super chat function. Just hit the $ under. You can ask a question, and I'll really focus on that question. But let's go to some of the chats. So this is true in Texas. Early voting numbers are off the charts. So I definitely think in the state of Texas that this would probably help Democrats. However, we have seen that Trump has been improving his support among Hispanics. So I think these things maybe could cancel each other out. I definitely expect Trump to win Texas. I don't. That's not where I'm focusing right now. I think in the future it's going to be the state that everyone's talking about. But purely in the 2020 election, the three most important states, number one is Pennsylvania. Number two is Wisconsin. And then number three is like a tie, I would say, between a few states, probably like North Carolina, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan. But Pennsylvania and Florida are the two states that are going to decide the election. So that's definitely what I think right now. Um, what is interesting right now is when we look at kind of what the mainstream media is saying. I personally think that Biden has an edge right now. If I had to call the election today, I'd probably guess that Biden would win. However, I think that the mainstream media is making the same mistake that they did in 2016. I think kind of that they lost some of their credibility in 2016, and I'm just shocked at how one-sided they are still being in 2020, because I think it's a lot closer than people think. I mean, this election is not over. And so I don't know kind of why a lot of people are saying it is. I mean, I've been looking at some of the other YouTube channels saying there's no way that Trump's going to win, blah, 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 blah. I really think 2020 has been an unprecedented year in terms of just political variability. And I mean, our candidates are very, I mean, they're the oldest candidates we've had in history. There's just so much division. I mean, there's been violence, political violence, riots. And so, I mean, I think people like are very, very confident either Trump 2020 or Biden 2020. There's not a lot of people in the middle. So, and people are just very, very, I mean, so I think it's going to be hard to predict. I don't think we can put all of our money in the polls, because I'm not confident that diehard Trump supporters, they don't trust the polls. I don't know if they're going to answer these polls accurately. So I definitely think we could see a Trump, a shy Trump voter effect. Hayden Savak, thank you so much for the super chat. I mean, I would have answered your question if you had asked a question, but thank you so much there. And I really encourage y'all to use the super chat function there. Let's see. Let me kind of read some of the chats while I wait for some of the super chats to come in. Hey, do you think that a 269 tie could happen? I think that is possible. I think that in 2020, it's actually more possible of a tie than past elections. I think a tie sits around probably a 1% to 2% chance. If we look at kind of how there's only two states that allocate their congressional districts, Maine and Nebraska. So you can pick up one electoral vote in each state. And the second district in Nebraska and in Maine do seem to be pretty close. So that definitely kind of leaves the door open. I've shown in the past there's several different paths for a tie, and if it is a 269 tie, then Trump would win, just based on the fact that if you kind of look at it on a state by state basis, how they vote on it is kind of they vote on it by the House, but they do it by the state House. And the GOP holds, I think, 26 of the 50 states. So you could say that the tie goes to the runner or the incumbent. But that's just happening this time. Let's see. Chris Cook says that polls are more accurate today. 2016 did not weight non-college white males enough. Republicans are increasing registration because they're going door to door. Democrats are not because of virus. So this is a huge thing that's happening, is that the GOP ground game in Florida, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, they have been knocked on millions of doors, while the Democrats have knocked on 0 doors, because the DNC's policy because of COVID is not to go door to door. I think this gives the Republicans a massive advantage. They're going door to door, and I've heard anecdotes of people knocking on doors and convincing them to change. I've heard about people who have Biden signs in their yard, and they go knocking on their door, and they take the Biden sign out and put a Trump sign. I mean, these are just anecdotes, but the Democrats don't have this ground game. And we've seen in the past that the ground game, the get out the vote effort, definitely has a big impact. Sebastian, thank you so much for the super chat. Let's see what you have to say. Early voting is very worrying for the Democrats. Trump is less than 100,000 behind in Florida, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, and Arizona, when they expected Biden to have a 400,000 to 500,000 ahead. So this is a big point. Sebastian, I agree completely. And Thank you so much for the super chat. That was definitely very generous. If we look at the models, the 538 model, the JHK forecast model, the Cook political report, and some of these other models, they are not incorporating voter registration data or early voting data into their models, which I just cannot understand. I mean, Nate Silver has said that like it's too hard, it's too volatile. We don't know if all the registered Republicans are voting Trump and blah 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 blah. So that's why I've been saying, and I've been criticizing my comments for this, that I have more faith in the betting odds, like predicted, Bovada, than some of these models, because these models are just only looking at the polls. And because a lot more people are voting by mail, and we have this early voting data, we've had the most early votes by mail and early votes ever. Over 80 million people have early voted already, which is crazy. And we have access to this data, but these models just aren't including it. So Sebastian, I think you have a very, very good point, and I think we have to balance the polls out with some of this early voting data for sure. And it is worrying for Democrats. I saw an article on the CNN front page. It was admitting, it was saying that the Republicans are closing the gaps in Florida and North Carolina, and this is contrary to the polls. Do I think we should just throw out the polls out the window right now? Not yet, not yet. However, I think that some political pundits are trying to rely too much on the polls. When the data, which is hard data, and these political pundits love the data. If you look at the data, Republicans, their ground game, they're going door to door. They're registering more voters than Democrats. So I think this is something that we can't ignore right now. So let me kind of go to some of the more of the chats, and if y'all kind of have a burning question, I would love for y'all to use the super chat feature. Sebastian, thank you so much there. Let's see. So just for people who I just joined my forecast, what I kind of said at the very beginning, I do think that we're going to have a pretty good idea of who is in the lead election night. I don't think that it is going to be officially called. I think we're going to know who wins North Carolina by 9 p.m. on Tuesday, on November 3rd, Tuesday. If Biden wins North Carolina, then I think we can pretty easily call the election for Biden, because I think North Carolina is a must-win for Trump. However, if Trump wins North Carolina and by pretty significant margin, then I think the election is a pure toss-up. All the polls have been telling us that Biden is very narrowly up in North Carolina. So the polls are wrong there. I think then at that point then we can say, look, this election is wide open. I don't think we can trust the polls as much as we have. So that is what I'm going to think. I'm going to be live streaming on election night. And so I would love for y'all to join me, because I think I'm gonna have the most up-to-date information. And people on the news, on the TV, aren't going to be kind of saying the stuff that I'm saying, because they have to be more careful. But I'm just going to tell you what's on my mind, who I think's ahead, and what I think. Let's see. Sebastian, thank you so much for the super chat right now. Very, very generous. $23 there, Sebastian. I really appreciate it. Let's see what you said. Super proud of your growth, man, from 1 to 2 years to averaging 100 to 1,000. So happy for you. Sebastian, thank you so much. You've been one of my most loyal fans. And so I really appreciate your support there. One thing that I want to look at right now, looking at the betting odds, the betting odds are better for Trump than they were in 2016. Part of the reason why I think for this is kind of people are kind of pricing in that the polls might be wrong. Again, if y'all know betting odds, Trump right now is at -175 on Bovada. And or no, Biden is at minus 175 on Bovada. Hillary Clinton in 2016 was at like minus 300. So Hillary almost had a double chance to win, as Biden has it right now. But wow, Tyler Piper says I took Trump 1,200 day before the election. That was a very, very, very good bet. So, but that is crazy. So I think a lot of people are going to be betting on the election. I was kind of betting small amounts on Predict It, but I don't want to trash their website, but there's just a lot of fees. They like take a 5% cut when you take out money. They take a 5% cut when you sell a share. So I don't have a ton of money on Predict It. I think I'm gonna make a lot of bets on the day before the election, and maybe even some live bets on November 3rd. But I think that's pretty fun to say. So Hayden Savek, thank you so much for the super chat. What state do you think Trump could win that he doesn't really have a chance of winning? And I said New York. What do you think it could be? I think some of the states that he could win potentially that he didn't win 2016 would be Nevada or Minnesota. I have a very hard time thinking New York. It's I think it's pretty clear that Biden's gonna win New York. But definitely a good question. But Hayden, thank you so much for the super chat. Definitely a good question there. So one thing that I also want to touch on too is all the attention on election night. I think all the media coverage, all the news coverage is going to cover the presidential election between Trump and Biden. I think that one thing that is going to be kind of underreported here is the Senate. I think the Senate is going to be very, very important. And before I get into that, Clown World, thank you so much for your super chat. $2. Hey, I appreciate any of the support. Will Trump win Big League? Is it Big League or Big League? I thought it's kind of more of Big League or huge. Regardless of who wins, I don't think it's going to be Big League or huge. Right now, my current projections, which definitely can change, have both candidates under 300 electoral votes, and Trump won over 300 electoral votes in 2016. So I think this is going to be a pretty close election. Even though that right now I think Biden might have a small edge, by no means do I think it's going to be a Biden landslide. And for the people who think it's going to be a Biden landslide, I really don't think that they've looked at the data in North Carolina, in Pennsylvania, like Z Bastion was saying. This early voting data, this voter registration data that shows that Republicans are closing the gap with Democrats. So while most of the polls right now have the Democrats favored, if we look at the voting data, and the polls are not voting data, the polls are guesses. If you look at the voting, cold hard voting data in Florida and in North Carolina and some of these other states, we see that the Republicans are doing pretty well. And one caveat: not all the registered Republicans are going to vote for Trump. And in fact, I think that in 2020, I think we're going to see a lot of crossover. In 2016, we saw a lot of kind of lifelong Democrats vote for Trump, kind of the typical white working class union voter. And I think we might see some moderate Republicans vote for Biden. So I think we're going to see a lot of crossover there. But if we're seeing newly registered votes or newly registered Republicans, these are going to be Trump voters. I mean, people who are getting into the Republican Party now, when Trump is the leader of the party, they're going to vote for Trump, is what I think. And people who are newly registering as Democrats, I don't think that they're going to vote for Trump. Chris Crooks, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Thank you so much for the super chat. I love your pair doing the little muscle thing right there. So thank you so much. Let's see. Warren Matthews says, "I was at a Trump rally yesterday. His enthusiasm is off the chart." So I'm actually curious. Warren, do you think you could answer some questions about it? So like, how was it? How was it like? Did you talk to some people there? What are they thinking about the election? Do they think that Trump is going to win, or are they not feeling great about that? I'd love if you'd kind of just have some feedback, because that's pretty interesting. Let's see. Fidel Vasquez says, "Have you planned and submitted on who confirmed winner for 2020 election day?" No. And I'm not going to place any bets until election day. I think because I think there's just a lot of things that can change. Even though 80 million people have cast their votes, I think more than 80 million people are going to cast their votes on election day. I think we are going to have the highest voter turnout since 1908 in terms of percentage. So in terms of raw numbers, the most people are going to vote in the 2020 election. I mean, no one's going to contest that. But in terms of percentage, and this is a pretty bold claim, I think it's going to be the highest voter turnout number since 1908. And one thing kind of talking about voter turnout. So voter turnout in the past, when we've had voter turnout, high voter turnout elections, like in 2008, the conventional wisdom is that this helps Democrats. And this is true. I think overall it does. However, in the Rust Belt, if we look at the register or the eligible people in 2016 who didn't vote, 70% plus of them in the Rust Belt were white working class voters. And if we look at the demographics of Trump versus Hillary Clinton voters, Trump overwhelmingly won white working class voters. So if Trump can get a lot of the eligible voters in the Rust Belt, who most of them are kind of the white working class voters, to turn out, they're probably more likely to be Trump voters than Biden voters. And so while Biden might run up the margins in California, in New York, and some of these other states, voter turnout actually could help Trump in the Rust Belt. Where it would hurt Trump, I think, would be in Texas, even though some things he's going to win Texas, in Georgia, in North Carolina. I think North Carolina is one of the main states. Arizona, I think it could hurt him there. I think North Carolina, if voter turnout's high, I think it's going to be hard for Trump to keep that. But he did win that state by 3.5 points. So Easy Roots has an interesting question. Which one do you think has more people, Rhino or hashtag walk away? So I think what Easy Roots is referring to here is kind of the Republican voters who are going to vote for Biden, or maybe the Democratic voters who are going to vote for Trump. I think this is a pretty interesting question. If we look at it by demographics, it appears, and I did a video about this 2 days ago, so y'all should definitely check that out. But Trump, in the polls, it appears that he's losing support among whites without college degrees. It appears that he's gaining support, though, among whites with college degrees, Hispanics, and blacks. And there wasn't much information on Asians, I don't think, just because they're a pretty small percentage of the voting electorate right there. So it's good, but if we look at it, his drop with whites without a college degree is greater than kind of the numbers and all those other ones. So it's hard to know. I think both of these groups have gotten a lot of media attention. Like kind of the Lincoln Project, which is supposed to be composed of kind of disaffected Republican voters, and if we look at the hashtag Walk Away movement, or I forget what Candace Owens's movement is called. It's not Blackout. That's her book. But yeah, so there's definitely kind of more people doing it here. So let me kind of move into the chats. Thank y'all so much for being so generous with the super chats. Y'all have all been so great, and I really appreciate y'all going in. So do you think it's more likely for Biden to win Iowa or Trump to win Michigan, Wisconsin, or Minnesota? So that is a very, very good question. We've seen a couple of polls come out of Iowa that have Biden winning, but Trump won Iowa by 9.5 points. I would say for this one, it's probably even though that the models would definitely say that it's more likely that Biden's going to win Iowa. Again, I think we're going to see the shy voter effect in the Rust Belt. And I would include Iowa and Ohio as being kind of part of the Rust Belt. They're kind of still part of the Midwest right there. So interesting. Yeah, but it's actually very interesting. This is one question that I have. Where are y'all betting money on the election? Because I'm kind of done with predict it just because of all the fees there, and I'm trying to find a website that has the lowest amount of fees and has kind of the best odds. So if y'all could put that in the chat, I would really appreciate that. Let's see. Someone says McKinney 2024. Actually, I haven't heard that yet, but I think she would actually be a fairly good candidate for the Republicans. She's young, but let's see. Blexit. Thank you so much there. Let's see. Do you think Obama Trump voters in the Midwest will come back around and vote for Biden? So I think we're going to see some Obama Trump voters come back for Biden. I think we saw a lot of those voters just hated Hillary Clinton. But I think that most of Trump's voters are going to stick with him. So we might see some, but I think that 75% plus of the Obama Trump voters are going to stick with him, because I think that the same reasons why they voted for Trump in 2016, they're going to vote for him in 2020 if they were kind of voting for Trump. If they were only voting against Hillary Clinton and just didn't like her character personally, maybe they might come back to Biden. If we kind of look at the likability and favorability numbers, Biden's numbers are higher than Hillary Clinton's were, but that's just something to look at. Let's see. What will the Republican turnout versus Democratic turnout will be? If we look at the numbers, like it appears that more Trump voters are enthusiastic to vote than Democratic voters, but I think that it's going to be pretty even. I mean, I can't look one way and see like an ad that isn't for voting. I mean, everyone is telling people to vote, and at college right now, I mean, there's just kind of a huge effort to get everyone to register to vote. And I think it's pretty widespread. So I think on both sides, I think obviously on college campuses, that's going to increase Democratic turnout. And then on Republican, or with the ground game door knocking, I think that's going to register a lot of Republicans. So I think voter turnout on both sides is going to be very happy, or yeah, very, very high. Let's see. Thank y'all for answering my question. See, Tower Paper says Bovada, Bookmaker. Bet line. Okay. Thank you guys for telling me about the thing. So, um, let's see. Okay. The line right now is Joe Biden minus 175, Donald Trump plus 145. And so that those odds are actually fairly even. Let's see. Pablo Wesley says independents are breaking for Biden. So in the polls, it does appear like this. In 2016, coming up to election day, we about 15% of the electorate was undecided, while in 2020 appears that only 5% of the electorate's undecided. So I don't think these independent voters are going to have much effect. Looking at the like there's been some town halls with undecided voters and some like kind of focus groups. I'm curious, who are these undecided voters? Like this is one question for the chat. Do you know anyone who's undecided at this point? I feel like in 2020, everyone is just so like people have strong opinions. I understand in 2016, people that didn't like either candidate were undecided, but I feel like right now people hate one candidate more than the other candidate. That's going to cause them to vote for the other one. I can't see people like equally. They're like not knowing who they are going to vote for now. But let's see. Right now, I'm still going to the chat. I'm trying to catch up. Sorry if I missed some of y'all's chats, but if you don't want me to miss some of your chats, definitely drop a super chat pretty soon. Yeah, someone says everyone has made up their mind. Someone says if you're undecided as of now, you won't be voting. Sebastian says I bet 20 grand on Trump using Ladbrokes. So wow. Sebastian, that is crazy. If Trump wins, I would hope you would donate a little bit to me. No, but that is crazy. Wow. So Sebastian is very, very confident that Trump is going to win. But hey, do you have your reasons? And I mean, what I've actually been very, very, very impressed by is like the people in my comments have typically been pretty smart. So all you viewers, while I have my own opinions, I respect all of what y'all have to say. And because y'all are very smart, and y'all kind of taught me to kind of look at different things, look up different things. Fidel Vasquez, will voter suppression be an issue on election night? I think maybe the thing we might see is like long lines and stuff. If voter suppression is an issue, I think it's actually going to probably hurt Republicans more, because I think we're going to see more Republicans vote on election night, and we've seen the data that more Democrats have voted early, but I think most people are going to vote, or most Republicans are going to vote on election night. Let's see. Yeah, basically no third-party voters. Yeah, and like I do agree with Chris Crooks right here. Mail-in ballots and kind of early voting has reduced the potential for a Comey effect. What I thought was very interesting, I saw this on Twitter the other day. After the final debate, the phrase "Can I change my vote?" was trending on Twitter. And it depends state by state if this is possible. But I mean, Trump had not a great first debate, but I thought he actually did slightly better than Biden in his second debate. So presumably the people that were asking this, if there were actually people asking this, not just kind of bots, they would probably want to change the vote from Biden to Trump. And so I definitely think more Biden voters have voted early, but I think lately maybe some more moderate voters, maybe people who don't love Trump but also don't love Biden, I think we might see them break more for Trump as of late, maybe especially kind of with this Hunter Biden stuff, but who knows? Let's see. I want to read y'all's stuff more, but if you definitely kind of want me to answer one question, you can definitely do a super chat. What will I change my name to after the election? I did a poll. I think Ben's election predictions won, but I might do one other poll or kind of a name contest there. People are talking about Gretchen Whitmer a lot. I don't really know how much of an effect she's going to have. I know that they say her approval is at 60%. That's pretty surprising to me because I think she kind of had some of the more harsher lockdowns, but 60% is pretty good for governor. Let's see. Betfair are extremely confident on Biden. Let's see. I think due to down ballot voting, Republicans will remain control of the Senate 51-49. Look, Ed So, you have the exact same predictions at me. I think that Republicans are going to lose in Maine, Colorado, and Arizona, but I think they're going to win in Alabama, North Carolina, both races in Georgia, and in South Carolina and in Iowa. So I have these same exact predictions as you, even though all the models say that the Democrats are going to win. Let's see. Yeah, Pablo says that PA is going to be a ish show on election day. I definitely agree. I want to keep my monetization. That's why I'm not going to curse. Yeah, I'm actually curious, Sebastian. What average price did you get on Trump? 265. What is that? Oh, like 265 on the dollar. Okay, interesting. Oh, okay. Let's see. Um. Yeah, can we get an updated 4 days out election map prediction tonight? I'm gonna have one up tomorrow, hopefully by noon. So definitely be on the lookout for that. Yeah, so there was a poll out of Wisconsin that was at 17 points. Definitely an outlier. I didn't kind of look at the data here. I kind of just, I mean, I really don't know. It's definitely kind of it doesn't look great. For Trump, but I mean, it's just hard to know with these polls. I'm kind of more reliant on voter registration data, but also looking at polls. So if I had to guess right now, I mean, if there's an A+ rated poll according to 538, that's Biden up 17. I'd probably say he's probably going to win that state. But again, it's hard to know with these individual polls. It's definitely more prudent to take the average of these polls. Let's see. I would love to do a collaboration with a other channel. If y'all have any ideas? I've reached out to some of the big ones like Red Eagle, Let's Talk Elections, some other ones that they haven't really responded to me because I think they're bigger than me. But I would love to do something there. So maybe if y'all could help me out there too. Gosh, it's really kind of hard to keep up with these chats. Okay, I'll probably only stay on here for about like 10 more minutes. So if y'all kind of have any last super chats, I would love to answer y'all's questions here. I really like doing it, but it's almost past 1 a.m. or it is past 1 a.m. in the Eastern time zone. So, um, election center, yeah, I would do a collab with you. Maybe we can talk. Um, but so all right, let's look at one last thing that I want to look at is just kind of look at some of these polls that have come out recently. So I'm going to go on Real Clear Politics and analyze all the polls that came out today because there was a lot of polls that came out today. And we actually have some polls that were released today. The two polls that were released today were by the Trafalgar Group. Trump +3 in Florida, so definitely a good poll for him. And Biden +2 in the state of Nevada. Then the most recent poll from Thursday is Trump +2 in Michigan by the Trafalgar Group. So this is all very, very, very interesting because they do appear to be outliers from kind of more of the mainstream polls. But if we look back to 2016, the Trafalgar Group, Rasmussen, these were the most accurate polls then because they kind of picked up on the shy voter effect there. So very, very interesting there. When got some of the more polls, we see some a bunch of polls from Florida. So 4 polls from Florida, plus Biden +3, Biden +4, Biden +3, and Biden +6. So definitely a little different from the +3 that we saw from the Trafalgar Group. If we look at we see a Rasmussen poll from Arizona that has them up 4. Interesting there. We have some North Carolina polls. Tie, Biden +3, Biden +1. One that's pretty interesting in Iowa and Georgia, we've seen a lot of polls recently that have in Iowa and Georgia that have Biden up. I don't necessarily agree with these polls, but I think it's just pretty interesting that they have him up. I mean, I still think Trump's going to win both Georgia and Iowa, but I mean, it's just interesting because we've seen Biden +4, and I don't know exactly how accurate these pollsters are, but it's interesting there. Let's see. All right, guys. I'll probably stay on here for 5 more minutes. So if you have a last super chat, please get that in right now, and I'll answer your question. That'll be kind of the last thing I cover, and I will come back tomorrow. I have tomorrow. I'm gonna bring out my 4 days away from the election updated forecast there. So definitely tune into that. And other than that, I'll try to answer some of y'all's questions here. All right, guys. If y'all don't kind of have any last questions, I'll get on tomorrow. I'll try to do another live stream tomorrow night too. So see y'all then.